Why does a person choose to hunt a woman, leave the scene, only to return to complete the kill for no reason at all? What does it mean to crave the ultimate act of violence against a complete stranger? The psychological mechanism that allows an individual to commit repeated brutal violence with no discernible emotional connection is the core of this case. Welcome. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and this is my mental health analysis of the murder of Kitty Genovese. I will be focusing on the main mental health and psychological indicators while providing the backstory. I don't just talk about the crimes, I talk about the psychology behind the crimes and the mysteries that captivate us. I look beyond the facts of the case to understand the why of the crime. My analysis is based on my speculations. It's not a diagnosis of anyone involved in this case. The most compelling psychological indicator present in this case is the predatory organized thought process of the perpetrator, Winston Moseley. He was a married man, a father of 3 children, with a job as a machine operator and no prior criminal record at the time. This presents a facade of a conventional life, a deliberate construction of normalcy designed to mask a deep-seated violent compulsion. How does a man, outwardly a respected neighbor in Queens, New York, internally harbor a motive so chillingly simple, the desire to hunt and kill a woman? Moseley himself admitted that he got up around 2 a.m. on March 13, 1964, specifically with the intent to find a woman and kill her. He drove around the quiet streets in his white car, armed with a hunting knife, actively searching for a victim. This isn't a crime of passion or a spontaneous escalation of a robbery. It's a calculated, goal-directed behavior that reveals an underlying psychopathy or severe antisocial personality disorder. His own testimony was chillingly devoid of emotion or regret, stating he preferred to attack women because they were easier and didn't fight back. The victim, 28-year-old Catherine, or Kitty Genovese, she was simply driving home to her apartment in Queens after a shift as a bar manager. She was spotted by Moseley while waiting at the traffic light at around 3:15 a.m. He followed her, and the chase began. This sudden, unprovoked focus on a random person illustrates the depth of his dehumanization of others. Kitty was not a person to him. She was an object to fulfill a violent, aggressive fantasy. The next significant psychological angle is the concept of escalation and offense proliferation. The murder of Kitty was not Moseley's first offense, nor was it his last act of violence before his arrest. He confessed not only to her murder and sexual assault, but also to the murders of 2 other women, Anna Johnson and Barbara Carlick, as well as multiple other sexual assaults and numerous burglaries. This suggests a pattern of increasing severity and frequency in his criminal behavior, a psychological spiral where smaller acts of transgression, like robbery, were no longer sufficient to satisfy his escalating need for dominance and control. The attack on Kitty itself was prolonged and separated into 2 distinct stages. The first attack occurred near her car, where she was stabbed twice. When a neighbor, Robert, yelled from a window, Moseley fled temporarily. But this momentary interruption did not lead to a remorse or an escape. Instead, it seems to have fueled a sense of defiance and a stronger psychological drive to complete the act. The fact that he returned about 10 minutes later to hunt for her again, finding her severely wounded at the rear of her building, demonstrates a remarkable degree of goal persistence and a lack of emotional empathy. He was not afraid of getting caught. He was obsessed with finishing his mission. Let's examine his motive here. The psychological need for absolute control. Moseley told police that his motivation was simply to kill a woman. This phrase is profoundly revealing. It indicates a deep-seated issue with power, gender, and sexual aggression. The murder was not about robbery, although he did steal money. The true psychological currency was the act of taking a life and establishing complete control over another human being. During the second stage of the attack, he stabbed her several more times, sexually assaulted her, and left her to die. The sequence, the violence, the sexual violation, and the final abandonment, is a classic manifestation of a criminal whose violence to compensate for profound feelings of inadequacy or powerlessness in other areas of his life. His ability to return home after this horrific act, calmly wash his knife, place it in his toolbox, and go to sleep, only to rise later and go about his day as a husband and father, highlights a profound disassociation and compartmentalization of his criminal and domestic lives. He built an impermeable psychological wall between the respectable family man and the savage predator. The context of the crime, the widespread misunderstanding of the bystander effect, also offers a fascinating psychological angle on the surrounding community. The now famous and somewhat exaggerated initial New York Times report claimed 38 witnesses saw or heard the attack and did nothing, while trial testimony revealed this was a distortion, with shouts from windows and even a phone call being made. The core issue the case raises remains a critical social psychology, diffusion of responsibility. In a group setting or in a densely populated apartment complex, the perceived responsibility to act is often diluted. The thought process is this: surely someone else has already called the police, or it's not my personal problem to solve. This psychological phenomenon explains how well-meaning, otherwise moral people can fail to intervene in a crisis. They don't lack morality. They experience a psychological block, a transfer of personal accountability to the anonymous group. The psychological impact on the witnesses who did see or hear the attack and failed to act must have been immense. The collective shame and confusion they experienced after the facts were publicized only further cemented the psychological gravity of the case. We can further analyze the perpetrator's pattern of behavior through the lens of the need for necrophilia and eroticized violence. During his testimony and confessions, Mosley revealed further disturbing details about his urges. One psychiatrist noted that Mosley stated he got no thrill with live women he raped, which points toward a strong necrophiliac interest. He also confessed to the murder of Anna Johnson in February 1964 and stated that he set fire to her genital organ. The need to inflict post-mortem violence and the admission of a lack of satisfaction with a live victim points to a significant psychological pathology that goes beyond simple sexual assault. It suggests that the ultimate act of sexual gratification for him was linked to the complete absence of life, control, and response from the victim. This is a profound level of deviance and a breakdown in typical human bonding and arousal patterns. It's a desperate attempt to gain ultimate power through denigration, where the victim's death becomes a functional requirement for his sexual release. The psychological craving is a strong indicator of a severe paraphilia, and it puts Mosley far outside the realm of typical violent offenders. Another psychological indicator lies in the early life and background of Winston Mosley. We know that Mosley was born in Manhattan in 1935. A crucial piece of information, later revealed to him, was that his stepfather was not his biological father. The concealment of his true paternity for a significant part of his childhood could have created an early psychological environment of mistrust, identity confusion, and underlying abandonment issues. When a foundational truth about one's identity is withheld or fabricated by caregivers, it can lead to a lack of trust in relationships and a fragmented sense of self. He also reportedly had an inordinate fascination with ants during his childhood. While seemingly minor, this early behavior, especially when coupled with later acts of cruelty, could be a psychological clue to an early development lack of empathy and a need to control and destroy small, helpless creatures. This kind of behavior can be a precursor to a complete lack of regard for human life that he exhibited in adulthood. The victim is merely another powerless organism to be observed and eliminated. Mosley's post-conviction actions further illuminate his psychological state, particularly his ongoing need for manipulation and grandiosity. Even while serving his life sentence, Mosley displayed a persistent pattern of antisocial behavior and a sense of entitlement. In 1968, he escaped while on a hospital visit in Buffalo. During his time on the run, he raped a woman and held hostages at gunpoint before being recaptured. Later, he earned a college degree in sociology while being incarcerated. While education is positive, his attempt to appear as an inmate liaison to the Attica Correctional Facility and his correspondence with a woman who became his pen pal demonstrates a desire to present a reformed, intelligent, and socially engaged image. This is a classic manifestation of the narcissistic and manipulative traits often found in individuals with severe personality disorders. He was attempting to re-narrate his public identity, seeking admiration and validation even from behind bars. This is not a sign of true psychological rehabilitation. It's a demonstration of his capacity for profound and sustained deception. Finally, the most profound and unsettling psychological indicator is the mystery of the trivial catalyst. Mosley stated that the sole reason he chose Kitty was that he saw a woman at the traffic light. There was no personal connection, no prior grievance, and no logical motivation a typical person could grasp. The crime occurred because he saw an opportunity, a moment of vulnerability in the quiet, early hours of the morning. This complete lack of meaningful trigger, the simple presence of a woman, is the core psychological horror of the case. It means that the crime was utterly random and could have happened to anyone, anywhere. This randomness reveals a final psychological trait, a deep-seated hostility and rage displaced onto society. The victim was simply the vessel for a rage that had been building inside him, likely for years, stemming from the underlying psychological issue of identity, control, and power. He continued to seek parole 18 times, always maintaining a narrative of denial or minimizing his actions. He even bizarrely claimed at one point that a mobster was the true killer and he was simply the getaway driver. This persistent denial, even in the face of overwhelming evidence, underscores a psychological inability to confront the sheer monstrosity of his own deeds. His death in prison in 2016, 52 years after the murder, finally closed a chapter in a life dedicated to the fulfillment of pathological violent fantasies. The analysis of his psychology is not about finding an excuse for the crime, but about understanding the frightening why behind an act that continues to echo in our collective consciousness. Wow, this case is really frightening in so many levels. He demonstrates that a psychopath can happen at any time, anywhere. And that's why it's so important for all of us to be aware of our surroundings, even at 3 o'clock in the morning, driving along the road. No matter where you're at, be careful, look around, and be observant of those around you. So what did you think about this case? Were there any elements that stood out to you? If you want more mental health analysis of true crime stories like this one, be sure to subscribe for more. And if you found this case compelling, be sure to watch this next story. It will make you more aware of your surroundings. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe.